Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and in this video I have a complete custom mechanical keyboard build that you can get all from Drop, one-stop shop, no shipping fees, everything for about $240, and it was relatively easy. It took less than 30 minutes to make. Let's get started with the typing test of the Drop Carina with the aluminum plate, with the Drop Skylight keycaps, with Lubed Kailh Pro Burgundies coming up. Alright, now that you listened to that sound test, you gotta admit it sounds pretty dang good, and this build has been really satisfying to type on. Absolutely been loving it, but there are a few downsides here and there, and we'll get started talking about everything pretty soon. But Drop did send me over pretty much everything that's needed to build this board except the lube and the modification supplies. That is my own doing. But let's get started with what comes in the box. Alright, so when you get everything, it comes in 4 boxes, I believe. We've got the boxes of switches here, and you do get your own pick. Drop has a bunch of ready-to-ship switches on their website. The Holy Pandas, Halo switches, Kailh switches, Cherry switches, they pretty much have the whole shebang, except really fancy switches that are a bit on the high end. You're gonna have to get those somewhere else. But I wanted to try something new, and that is the Kailh Pro Burgundy. Those are linear switches. They're sort of speed switches. They actuate a little bit faster than the regular 2mm, and they're pretty heavy. So I find that I don't really ever bottom out when I type on them, and that can be a little bit of a bummer because I really like the way that the switches sound when they bottom out. Just so you know, that nice sound when it bottoms out. But with these switches, I found that it's a little bit too heavy for my liking, especially for the ring and pinky fingers. Anyways, that's the first box. The second box you'll get is the Drop Skylight keycaps. These are pretty much the OG keycaps that show up on your Drop Control or your Drop Alt, and that is the light gray and dark gray colorway. This one, I don't remember what it's called. It's called the Horizon Drop Skylight keycap set. They have other colors too, like just black or just white. There's a lot of colors. All the links to everything will be down below if you're interested. As I've said before, this entire kit comes from Drop and is about $240. Can be a little bit less depending on what switches you go with, and it can be a little bit more depending on what plate you decide to go with in this board. I went for aluminum because I'm typically used to the way that sounds, but they also offer brass and copper. Never used a copper plate before, but brass tends to be a little bit less flexible when you're typing, but it's barely noticeable, I would say. So the plate comes in a different box by itself, and then the rest of the kit comes in a different box. And the rest of the kit means the PCB, the acrylic case, the stabilizers, and pretty much all of the screws needed to put this bad boy together. That comes in one case as well, and in it you also get a switch puller and the white rubber USB-C cable. And like other Drop keyboards, it does have 2 USB-C ports on the left and right, and that means that I wasn't really able to get this to work using my custom coiled cables. Pretty much none of them was enough to power this board, so I had to resort to using this cable that came with it. I had the same problem with my drop control and my drop alt as well. So unless it's a fairly short cable, that means no coils, because coils makes it a lot longer. It's not going to be able to power the board properly. And what happened with me is that it would plug in, turn on, and like make that connection sound and then turn right off. So it's a bit of a pain, but if you're using just a straight cable and that happens to be custom, it's probably going to work. The PCB that comes with this is hot swappable. That's what makes it super easy to build. There's no soldering, no need to do any of those complicated things. However, with this PCB, you do get north-facing LEDs, and what that means is the LED is at the very top and your switches have to be turned upside down pretty much to be able to fit in those hot swappable sockets. Now that will interfere with your cherry profile thick keycaps such as GMK keycaps, such as EPBT, some other keycaps that you can buy online that are that profile and that thickness. It will interfere with switches on this PCB. And you know, if that's not something that you're worried about, then you know, just disregard all of that because it's gonna work fine. The drop Skylight keycaps are OEM profile, meaning there's no interference whatsoever. On top of the hot swap PCB, you also have the plate mounted cherry style stabilizers. And these are unmodded, unlubed, right out of the box. They are separated from each other, so you don't need to take out the wire, take out the housing. You can just mod that right away. Get your dielectric grease, get your Krytox 205G0, get your flesh cutters, and just clip the legs off that bad boy because it doesn't sound good unmodded. So I did clip it, I did lube it, and I did put a ton of dielectric grease on the wires, and that's why the stabilizers sound pretty good. I don't band-aid mod personally because I just don't like the way that sounds. But if you missed a sound test at the beginning, we'll do a stabilizer sound test right now. If you're interested in learning how to mod your stabilizers, I'll link you to my fail tutorial right here or down below to one of our website guides, which is a lot more helpful than my video, but you know, depends on what way you learn, right? While I'm talking about the website, I have started collecting an email list, you know, just in case, because everyone on the internet says you should build an email list. So I was like, okay, sure, but what can I offer to my viewers? So I made a top 5s out of everything that I review, from keyboards, mice, headsets, headphones, desk accessories, all of that stuff. Top 5 of everything. And you can get access to that by going to switchandclick.com/take my email, sign up with your email, and you'll get an email in about 5 minutes leading you to that top 5 page. Moving on. So I did lube these switches. I used a strange lube formulation on these switches, and that is the Gazzew Lube 3G formula. Got that directly from him while I was trying out some of his U4Ts and silent linear switches. His method is very different, and I followed that, where you separate these switches and then you'll like lube the rails and then donut dip the spring, put everything together, press it a few times, and have it lubed that way. So it took about an hour to get everything to finish, and that's faster than my usual lubing speed, where I get the brush and I do the things really slow. But you can see that method up here if you want, in a video where I lubed all of my Boba U4 switches with that method. But it sounds relatively the same. There's not much difference between brush lube method and the Gazzew lube method. It's just different ways of doing different sort of similar things. They both work but that's how the switches are lubed. Really simple. One thing that I really like about this entire build is how easy it was to put together. Like I said, it took about 30 minutes. I did decide to add some foam on the bottom because there was space there. However, because of the acrylic case, you want to be able to use foam that's not too thick or opaque. Like, don't just put a piece of black foam in there and be like, hey, check out my keyboard. It's gonna look a little bit ugly. So I used some shelf liner here, and it is sort of see-through. That way the underglow RGBs get to shine through quite nicely. This build is pretty much all about RGB. You got RGB on the side, you can see RGB on the back. You have RGB shining through the keycaps, which have really extremely clean legends. I am pretty much a lover of the drop keycaps. The original ones and their new colorways are all really awesome. The legends are super clean. There's no disconnections. There's just some of the first keycaps that I've ever grown to really like and appreciate. The spacebar is not warped despite being this entire thing being made out of double shot PBT, and there's shine through. So RGB shines on this amazingly. Some things to know about this keycap set though. It will support the majority of layouts except 65 and 75. And the reason for that is because it's made to be compatible with the drop alt, drop control, and drop shift. So the keys that it is missing are the 1U modifiers on the right side of those 65 and 75% layouts. So the FN, the alt, and the control. That's what it doesn't have. But if you're looking for a 60% or TKL or full size, fully compatible kit, great. Some downsides. You know, it's got downsides and it's got upsides. The font is very clean. It doesn't have MAC keycaps, so if you're into that, short out of luck there. Other than that though, the keycaps are clean. On the back of your board, you have 4 rubber feet. No kickstands though, and that's pretty normal of drop keyboards. They do have their magnetic kickstands on the control and the alt and the shift, but this one has no kickstands. It does already have a nice angle. It's a little high, so I do recommend picking up a palm rest from either Keychron or Glorious. I really prefer the wooden ones, but you can go for the memory cushiony ones if you like that. As for software and RGB and secondary functions, there's a lot going on here, and to show you that, I have to show you the QMK configuration on drop so that we can look at the secondary layers. But this does have the function row on the very top. It does have some RGB things that you can do directly on the board, but if you really want to do your own custom RGB thing, gotta go to the drop QMK configurator or your own QMK toolbox, and you can figure that out. It's a little bit complicated, but there are a ton of guides online that you can follow and do that. It's got some secondary media keys on here as well. The arrows aren't too bad. It's FN and PL, semicolon, and apostrophe. So not too bad, not too hard to reach. You can do it all with just your right hand. You got delete on FN and backspace. And then you have a bunch of those other nav keys that I don't really have in my head very well. So you can see that on the screen right now. As for RGB, it does have a default sort of like cycling rainbow kind of thing, and every time your computer turns off and turns back on, that will be the default effect unless you change that in QMK. So there are some pre-built effects that we can go over right now. There's not a ton of things that you can work with though. There's maybe 6 effects. You can change the speed of the effect and the light and the brightness all from the board. Anything more than that, software. You can also add on more layers and more layers and macros, software. Right out of the box though, it's easy to build, easy to put together, and very easy to just get started using it. Easy to figure out. I didn't struggle too much with this build. It is tray mounted, so everything just screws right onto the bottom case. And I believe there were also standoffs while using this, and that's what made it easy to put the switches into the plate, into the PCB. When there's no standoffs, it's just a little bit harder. Overall, this is an amazingly put together kit. It's very beginner friendly. However, as far as price goes, it is a little bit up there, you know, especially since nowadays there's a lot of $100 really entry-level custom mechanical keyboards that you can play with that do have hot swap ability and RGB and, you know, all that fancy stuff that comes along with a pretty nice mechanical keyboard. You can check out this $100 custom keyboard build that I did a while back with the GK61, and there's a lot of other keyboards out right now, like the Novel Keys Entry Edition, the KBD67 Lite, the Portico. So there's a lot of different budget options that you can shop around with. But with those, one of the things that I find that's really beneficial with the kit that I have here is that you can get it all from drop. Just all of it all at once. I believe they also offer free shipping if your order is over $100, so you don't need to pay shipping on that. They've got switches, they've got keycaps. This comes with stabilizers. The only thing you're gonna have to buy are modding equipment such as lube, dielectric grease, paintbrushes, flush cutters, and only if you want to. So all of those things are a little bit optional in building a keyboard. You can buy all this, have it arrive at your doorstep, put everything together, and be good to go. If you find that you want to mod it later down the line, it is hot swappable, and they are plate mounted stabilizers, so everything's really easy to remove and put back together without having to desolder anything, take the plate off, you know, do all that stuff that takes a bunch of time that you just want to be like, you know, I'll do that next week, and then next week becomes next month, and you know, eventually you never really mod your board. So benefits here is that you can get it really quickly, it's really easy, and you don't need to do a ton of shopping around, and you also don't need to wait a really long time to get what you want, to get what you need to get started with a custom mechanical keyboard. I really enjoy the build. I really like the way that it sounds. Sure, the switches are a little bit difficult for me to use, but you know, I picked those because I wanted to experiment with them myself. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Links will be down below in the description box, and be sure to check out switchandclick.com/takemyemail to get access to my top 5s of everything I review. I need to add a top 5 when it comes to custom keyboards, since I actually have built more than 5 nowadays. So do that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!